Let's imagine you're a landowner in the antebellum South in 1850, and you've just bought a few hundred acres of flat, fertile dirt. You might think the hard part is over. You've got the land, you've got the climate, cotton practically grows itself here. But what you're actually looking at is one of the most ruthlessly optimized profit machines in American history. A single field could turn a few $1,000s of investment into a fortune within a decade, and the entire system ran on a ledger of human beings treated as line items. This is the plantation economy, a system most people understand as slavery happened on farms, but rarely see as the calculated financial machine it actually was. You'd think a system built on forced, unpaid labor would be crude and inefficient, but the opposite was true. Plantation owners ran some of the most sophisticated capital allocation operations in the 19th century American economy, tracking output per worker, calculating depreciation, and pricing human beings the way you'd price a stock. So how did a system this brutal also become this profitable? To understand the plantation economy, look at the cotton plantation, because cotton is where the math gets most extreme. And here's what most people get wrong. They assume the land was the asset. It wasn't. The land was cheap. What was expensive, and what plantation owners treated as their single biggest capital investment, was enslaved people. By 1860, an enslaved field hand could cost around $1,200 to $2,000, the equivalent of tens of thousands of dollars today. That price wasn't random. It was set the way any asset price is set, as the present value of the income that asset was expected to produce, minus the cost of keeping it running. Economists who later studied this called it exactly that, the same logic used to price a piece of machinery or a bond. Here's the mechanism. Enslaved labor let an owner push work far beyond what a free laborer would tolerate at any wage. Because the relationship wasn't wage-based at all. It was based on coercion and control of every aspect of a person's life. There was no negotiation, no quitting, no market wage to push against. That gap between what someone could be forced to produce and what they were paid, which was nothing, was the entire profit margin. Multiply that gap across hundreds of people on a single plantation. But cotton wasn't the only crop running this playbook. Sugar plantations in Louisiana and the Caribbean ran an even harsher version of the same model. Sugar processing required round-the-clock labor during harvest, so owners pushed output even further, and death rates on sugar plantations were notoriously higher than on cotton plantations. The crop determined how far the exploitation could be pushed, minimize the cost of labor to zero, maximize the hours extracted from it, and treat the workforce itself as the appreciating or depreciating asset on the books. Tobacco plantations in Virginia worked the same equation, just with thinner margins, since tobacco prices were more volatile. Rice plantations in coastal South Carolina and Georgia required even more specialized, dangerous labor, building and maintaining flooded paddies, and as a result, enslaved people with that specific knowledge commanded a premium price, almost like a worker with a rare technical skill today, except the premium went entirely to the person who owned them, not the person who possessed the skill. By 1860, roughly 70% of enslaved people in the South worked on cotton plantations specifically, because demand for cotton kept outpacing supply. Rising demand pushed cotton prices up. The market for human beings and the market for cotton were the same market, moving together. But you're probably wondering, if this was so profitable, why didn't every Southern landowner build a fortune? The thing is, this system only worked at scale, and scale required capital that most people didn't have. A small farmer with 1 or 2 enslaved workers operated on completely different economics than a planter with 200. This created the actual class structure of the South. A small number of large planters captured most of the wealth, while a much larger number of small slaveholders and non-slaveholding white farmers got a fraction of the upside while living inside the same system. The brutality of the model was constant. The profits were not evenly shared, and historians who ran the numbers in the 20th century confirmed that the average slaveholder earned returns on par with, or better than, other investments available at the time. That finding was controversial precisely because of what it implied. This wasn't an economically irrational system propped up by tradition. It was a rational system, in the narrow financial sense, built entirely on the fact that one category of person could be legally treated as capital instead of as labor. The entire plantation economy was built on one single, fragile assumption that the legal and political system would keep treating people as property indefinitely. That assumption wasn't a force of nature, it was a policy choice, because so much Southern wealth was tied up in it. By 1860, the market value of enslaved people in the South exceeded the value of all the South's railroads, factories, and banks combined. When the Civil War ended slavery, plantation owners didn't just lose their workforce. By their own accounting, they lost the single largest asset class in the Southern economy overnight, because it had never been wealth in any real sense. It had been a number on a ledger that depended on a person remaining unfree. The plantation economy wasn't a farming system that happened to use slavery. It was a system for converting human beings into capital,